Phase Zero, back again for another bonus episode. I'm your host today, Jenna Anderson, and I am joined by Aaron Perrine.
Look at us. Who would have thought? Finally.
And Jamie Jurek.
Aaron, we're just going to be starting on something new.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's fine. I'm ready. I'm ready to be done. That's fine. What are we watching? We got the Coco Melon. I'm ready to be done.
We'll find something. I also, like I said,
I can start over.
Go ahead.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
Go. I just think I could start over. That's it.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do a rankings episode at this point. Now that we've all voiced our opinions, now that we have a numeric scale of how we feel about all of these Fox movies, I feel like that only seems right. But we will schedule that at a later date. BD is busy, so he is not available at this episode, which we're kind of sad about because we would love to hear his thoughts on this movie, which is The New Mutants. This is now our final movie in the road to Deadpool and Wolverine, which is kind of wild. Like Aaron said, I can't believe that we're at this point. And yeah, we're just gonna break down the movie, how it holds up, how it doesn't hold up, and give it a 10 score. So everybody look forward to that. First and foremost, we have to do our Jamie recap. So take it away.
Oh gosh, we'll see. Okay, start that timer. Let's go. Oh, voiceover, Danny Morningstar. In all of us, there are two bears. Oh, what's going on? She wakes up and there's so many things. Oh, crash, boom, bang. Her dad comes in. We gotta get out of here. What's happening? Oh, this is a tornado. I don't know. We're all running. And they go to the forest in the woods. And she's like, his dad's like, right here. And she's like, stay with me. He's like, I gotta go help them. And he's like, bye. And she's like, what is that? A large bear? That doesn't look like a tornado. Boom, dad's dead. Everyone's dead. No. She wakes up in a hospital? In a school? In an abandoned building? What could it be? There's a lady there. She's a doctor. And she's like, I'm sorry. Everyone you've ever loved has died. No. And guess what? You're a mutant. And you got powers. We're here to just check on you and fix you out. Don't worry. You got survivor's guilt, but it's all going to be okay. Let's go to a group meeting. And then she's like, oh, there's all these teenagers like me. Who do we got here? We got a little bit of magic. We got a little bit of cannonball. We got a little bit of sunspot. We got a little bit of wolfsbane. And they're like, woohoo, we're all really angsty and teenagers. Ever heard of a little movie called Dream Warriors? And they're like, oh, what is your power? Oh, I'm so angsty. I don't want to talk to you. Oh, we can't be friends. Oh, we can't be friends. And then Ileana's like, oh, I'm so mean. But then Wolfsbane, she's like, Rain, she's like, oh, I'm so nice. I'm going to take you on a little tour. Here's where everything is. Here's the business. What's going on? Oh, yeah, you're kind of cute, aren't you? Oh, let me looking at you. And then they're like, oh, yeah, everything's, but something's weird. Oh, what's going on? People are starting to see weird things, scary things. It's a freaky nightmare up in this building. Also, guess what? They can't leave. There's a force field. And then the doctor's like, it's for your own good. You can't leave until you're going to get cured. And they all think they're going to go off to be X-Men. But guess what? That's not where they're going. They're going off to be killers. That's what they're being trained for. Oh no, they got to get out of this place. What are they going to do? But these crazy dream manifestations keep happening. They're going all around. And what? Oh, it's Danny the whole time. That's her mutant. Oh God, she's a mirage? Whoa. None of that. That's never said, but we know. And then it's like, oh boy, all these things are coming down. And then, the doctor, remember her? She's ordered by her higher-ups because she's the only one working in this building. She's on a little computer getting some business, getting some orders. And it's like, kill Danny Morningstar. She can't live. Is it Morningstar? Am I saying that wrong? Is it
Moonstar?
Damn it, thank you. I knew I was getting it wrong. Morningstar is a fake chicken brand. And so then, then it's like she's gonna at one point, Rain and Danny, they kiss. You love to see it. And then so Dr. Reyes, she's gonna kill Danny. She's like about to inject her with death. But then what's that? Wolfsbane? Oh, smelling trouble? She's a little wolfy girl? We've seen that before. She's like, no, hurt my girlfriend. And she attacks the heck out of that doctor, saves Danny, woohoo! But Danny, she can't wake up. So, oh no, her scary power is manifesting scariness everywhere. We've got the Smiley Men and all these other businesses, and it's really scary. And then, the big bear comes, and they're all like, we're gonna team up and we're gonna get it. And Magic's like, here we go. Oh, did I mention Lockheed is there? And they're like, boom, boom. And they all fight the giant bear. And then finally like, wake up, Danny. You need to wake up. And she finally wakes up and she's like, don't be mean, bear. I control you. You don't control me. Yay, everything's good. And they're like, oh, we're we're friends now. And we're going to go off into the world because the doctor's dead and there's nothing keeping us here. And we're friends and we're going to go. And we are the New Mutants.
3:45.
Snaps for Jamie.
Damn.
That was
Thank you.
very thorough, but very short. I love it. That was great. Well,
you.
while Jamie catches her breath, Aaron, let's all go around. Let's share, as BD puts it, the initial social media embargo reaction to this movie. Aaron, you go first.
Well, you know what? This is interesting because we would have been still in the throes of sort of semi-pandemic first movies out once everybody's creeping out to the theaters. So this poor thing got thrown out there. But I'll tell you what, I had more fun watching this one than some of the previous ones that we've done. I'll say that. And I dare say, in one of the many rewrites, reshoots, rejiggerings of this movie, there was a really delightful YA horror film that really would have been a massive moment for younger audiences, like slightly like teenage audiences, that I'm kind of sad we did not get. But for what we did get, this is not absolutely the worst of these. And for that, it deserves to be commended. I was fully expecting like, oh man, I missed Dark Phoenix, but I got pulled back in for this. But no, I was actually like mostly all right. An spectacular, but decent action horror movie set in the X-Men universe, right?
Jamie.
I like this movie. It is not perfect. It clearly got chopped up and it got screwed over in a lot of ways that we will talk about later in this episode. It could have 100% been a lot better than it is, but it checks a lot of boxes for me. As I said in my recap, this is just one big homage to Dream Warriors, which is my favorite Nightmare on Elm Street movie. I love Dream Warriors, and if you haven't seen it, it's very similar. Better. It's a lot better than this, but it's still, like, the bones are there. I also am such a sucker for teen stuff. You guys know Buffy's my favorite movie, or TV show of all time, and they're literally watching Buffy in this, which we will also talk about later in the episode. And also, it's queer. I mean, like, we don't get a lot of Marvel stuff where girls are just like straight up kissing each other, and it's like, all right, look at that, go girls, good for you. And I just like the cast. It is accents galore up in there, but I'm still enjoying myself. It's like I said, it's a very flawed movie, but I enjoy watching it.
I am so glad that this is the consensus of this panel. I will say, like Dark Phoenix, I had not watched this movie before. I had voraciously covered this movie while working at this website, but then by the time it finally came out, like Aaron said, it was the throes of COVID, and I was like, I'm not necessarily going to go risk getting COVID to go watch this movie. And then by the time it came out on streaming, the discourse was so insufferable. I was like, I'll get to this eventually. And I felt crazy watching this for the first time for this because I found this to be delightful. I do not think it is a perfect movie. I think it does have flaws. A lot of that seems to be all of the chopping up, a lot of the editing, but there is something in this that is so wonderful and so delightful. And I think that it still succeeds in a lot of ways. It is also funny because I had never seen this, and yet I actually have merch from this movie. Like, I literally have the Lockheed puppet because I had complained in the work Slack when this movie was coming out, and like COVID was happening and everything was shut down. I had complained in our work Slack. I was like, it sucks I can't go to Hot Topic right now and like buy a Lockheed watch. And Jim Viscardi from his jail cell then DM'd me and was like, what's your address? And then like they sent me a whole bunch of merch for this movie, and it was the cutest thing. And then I felt bad that I had never actually watched it, but now having seen it, I'm glad I have the merch. I'm glad I have the little puppet. Like, this movie is just fun. It's not as bad as some of the other movies that we've talked about in this road to Deadpool. So I'm glad that we all can seemingly agree on that here.
I feel like BD probably hates this movie, and not to speak for him, but I feel like he would be so much. This would be like a Madam Web situation where he would be so much harsher. And I think at the end of this episode, it's gonna get a review score that BD is gonna be salty about, and they're gonna be like, "You missed it, bro. You missed it. Sorry." Sure. That's my prediction right now.
Oh, absolutely,
because that's what's going to happen.
That's what happens when you miss this episode. Like, I don't know what to tell you. It's the same thing as the Deadpool 1 episode when he did not like our score for that. But yeah, so we will get to the 10 scores at the third portion of the show. But we're going to take a quick 1-minute break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the production of this movie, which has a lot to talk about in and of itself. And then just kind of breaking down a lot of the specifics. Like Jamie said, we're going to talk about Buffy. So stay tuned for that. Welcome back to Phase Zero and our New Mutants bonus episode. As I said, now we're going to kind of just break down a lot of the specifics of the movie, starting with a lot of details about the production first and foremost. I'm going to try to channel BD as he rattles off a lot of this, but there's a lot more about this than about most of the movies that we've covered so far. So this is directed by Josh Boone, who co-wrote the script with his childhood best friend, Nate Lee. They pitched it to Fox by creating a physical comic book using panels from the old original New Mutants comics to try to convey the idea that they wanted for the trilogy, which I love. I think that's really cool. It was officially greenlit back in 2015 after Boone had just finished working on The Fault in Our Stars for Fox, which I thoroughly enjoy that movie. I loved that book deeply. So I was really excited when he got brought on to direct this. I'm going to run through some of the rumored and or failed ideas that this movie had, and then we can kind of talk about those. So it was originally supposed to be set 3 years after Apocalypse, but that was rewritten and changed to the present day after Apocalypse was not well received. Initially, James McAvoy and Alexander Shipp were set to return as Professor X and Storm, but that was also changed when the movie was changed to the present day. Colossus was in early versions of the script, and we would have gotten the brother-sister dynamic there, but we did not get that. And then Rosario Dawson was originally cast as Reyes, but exited the film before it started production. So how do you guys feel about all of that, first and foremost?
I didn't know about Rosario Dawson. That's interesting. It would have been cool to connect it more, but I also like that this was going to be like the start of something new. It's in the title. We didn't need the X-Men because these are the New Mutants, and I like that they still talk about them. That's, it exists in this world. I would have loved to see these kids go on an adventure together in a sequels. I would have loved that. I didn't need those things, but those are not all the things you said are not things this movie needed. Of all the things this movie needed, I don't think those are the things.
Tony's going to be so sad that you said this movie doesn't need Colossus in a roundabout way.
Oh no, don't tell him. He doesn't listen to the show.
I know. But yeah, Aaron, how do you feel about these details as I just broke you with
that? I mean, it was funny. Also, dang, Tony, you don't listen to the show. I
know. What a way to find that out.
Right. I was like, wow. He hates all of us.
No, he just
I know.
For me.
I know. But there's a Jamie recap of every episode of Phase Zero. I find it interesting that they forged this bold vision for what would be next, and then it also still kind of had its little tendrils from the previous incarnation, and then unfortunately Apocalypse being what it was kind of scuttled all that and so I guess it's interesting that there were cracks in the foundation from the word go. Just from we'll get to the rest of it, but even here in the early days of it. And also, this is a really good get for a director too. He's coming out Fault in Our Stars. This is massive. If you follow anybody who works in a library or have any small children, I'm like, oh my goodness. So it is interesting. The Alexander Shipp as Storm thing, I've never liked how she got done in these at all, so maybe I am okay with her not being Storm again after the reception of this one as well. So, but yeah, we're already off to a weird start. None of the crazy stuff's even happened yet.
No, I do feel like with Storm, it's this double-edged sword because I totally agree with you. I do not think she was done well by these movies, but it's every appearance that I've seen of Alexander Shipp since then has been utterly delightful. She has been so good. And so it's I almost wish we would have gotten one more chance for her to actually get to be good as the character. And it does suck that it never happened, but that same thing can be said for so many elements of the Foxverse at this point. But yeah, so the movie was ultimately filmed in 2017, which if you take into account the 2020 release date, that's kind of a wild gap between the two. The first cut that they showed in test screenings was much more of a young adult movie. It reportedly tested really well on par with the first Deadpool movie, but it was changed to be more a straightforward horror movie, which was kind of what Josh Boone originally pitched, following the first trailer, which they edited the first trailer the way that they did because of the success of It, which is also really interesting just to kind of see how things kind of ebb and flow in the industry.
I get that because it was really great, but also this is Hollywood's problem sometimes. They see one thing succeed and then they're like, we gotta chase that dragon, and it's you just know you can't don't try to recapture something. Try to do your own little business And it just makes me sad because like a lot of people in the comments I know are not agreeing like with they think we're being too nice. And this movie has a lot of haters, and I don't blame the people for hating it. It's very much my kind of movie, so I forgive it. But like they say things like this, and I'm like, oh, they never learn. They've been doing this for 100 years, and they don't learn.
And again, we'll get into the more of the specifics. Like, the movie is not perfect. Like, people in the comments are bringing up like Magic being racist towards Danny, which like I personally did not know that part existed in this movie, and I did not like that at all. I was really glad when we just kind of pivoted away from that. But yeah, there's things of this movie that are inherently flawed, but we will acknowledge them. But like, even then, we can still celebrate the movie for what it was and like what the intent of it was. And so, speaking of the intent, as Aaron just keeps laughing, let's talk about the post-credit scenes that were supposed to be in this movie, because there was a lot of rumors, a lot of reports, a lot of speculation. So initially, John Hamm was expected to be in the post-credit scene as Mr. Sinister. That was later changed to. You didn't know this? Oh my gosh!
No.
I thought this was common knowledge because this was like heavily reported on.
This is the most important part of the movie to most of the internet. That's the most important thing about the New Mutants.
Yeah,
I was just this. Woo! I really never covered this movie. I don't think. Oh man, you guys know I thirst for that, man. And so, Mr. Sinister, not John Hamm.
I was just about to say.
Yeah, let's be clear. But John Hamm would be a great choice, I think. Wow, didn't know. You learned something new.
It's this weird, like, always a bridesmaid situation with Mr. Sinister. Like, we always got so close to possibly seeing him in this universe, and then it never happened. And I honestly think that will be for the best, because when the MCU X-Men inevitably get to Mr. Sinister, like, there is no expectation on the mainstream audience whatsoever, because like they just know him from X-Men 97 at this point. So I'm glad that ultimately worked out. But so later, Josh Boone originally denied that Mr. Sinister was even supposed to be in the movie, because he said that he was supposed to appear in Channing Tatum's Gambit movie, which obviously, as we know, also did not happen in any way, shape, or form. So just another example of Mr. Sinister not happening. And then later there were reports and further examples of like talking about the sequels, which we'll get into later in the show. But Antonio Banderas was supposed to be Sunspot's father, and then they would get into his connections to the Hellfire Club and kind of use that as the bedrock for the next two movies. But then ultimately we didn't get anything. Yeah.
Wow.
The level of disappointment from this panel is off the charts.
I see why people are, because like I didn't know any of this, so I just went into this movie like, oh, I like it, because I didn't have any of these expectations. I understand now. Some people thought they were going to see my boy Antonio Banderas. You know, I have a tattoo of that man. Fun fact. From Interview with the Vampire. That's okay. Well, what can you do? I guess.
You are just going through all the stages of grief right now. Like, you didn't even know this was possible.
I was up top. I was feeling good. And now I'm feeling bad.
If either of these things had happened, I feel like this would be like among your favorite of the Fox movies. Like, by far. Like, considering how positive you already are.
Yes.
Yeah.
If it had been as good as it could have been, oh my God. Absolutely. Nothing's touching X2, but it would have been high. Absolutely.
Yeah. Aaron, how do you feel about the post-credit scene stuff? Because it seems like you were more aware of it than Jamie was.
Oh, no. See, look, me and you were in the mud, Jay. Like, Jamie, me and Jenna were day by day joking around about what rewrite of this movie are we on? Which rejiggering of this? I think we got to a 4. And then I started messaging Jim on the side, like, what's the chances this even comes out at this point? Because so much stuff had changed. I think I remember writing up like very like offhandedly that Ham was supposed to be Sinister, and it performing better than any other thing we had talked about from the movie, other than the various like delays. It's a thing about these Fox movies. There's a large percentage of the fan base, I think, likes these movies not for what they are, but for what they could have been. And that is a core problem with all of it, is that there were a bunch of things. You wouldn't believe how excited some of these people are to see Channing Tatum finally wear his crop top in this darn movie that comes out this summer. If John Hamm is in anything as Mr. Sinister, a portion of the internet's like, we're redeemed. So, I mean, I feel for you, people out there who expected certain things and did not get them. But also, what a hilarious way to put on an otherwise okay YA horror movie And to Jamie's point, I completely agree about like the producers and the decision makers pump faking them out of themselves. Because if the movie tested well, like Deadpool, the movie probably would have been done on time to avoid the pandemic. And we live in a different timeline now, like completely different. Because then the second and third one get made. They get greenlit before the world gets plunged into chaos. You know what I mean? So it's a wild thing to think about the what ifs. I want to live in that world too. Sounds better.
Really, like, where was I? I started a comic before Aaron. I was around.
You sure did.
What was I doing?
You just were not covering this movie whatsoever, I guess.
Sometimes I am in my own little zone. Like, let's be honest. Sometimes I am just not like.
Understandable.
Plot twist. Yeah. For Jamie is that I actually am Bishop and I came from the future while you were not looking at Slack one day, and that's why you don't remember me. I've always been here, Jay. Always.
That's how you know everything. That's how you predict things so well on the show.
No, golly, what a good part of the lore. The good part of the Phase Zero lore.
We're building the lore in real time on this episode, and he's going to miss all of it. Skipping ahead in my notes a little bit, but to Aaron's point about the release dates. So the movie ultimately had 5 different release date changes, and that also it doesn't even count Disney removing it from the schedule amid the pandemic and then ultimately releasing it when they did. The part of that was also that a lot of the earlier delays directly under Fox were so that it wouldn't compete with other movies that we've already spoken about on the show. Because initially it was going to be pretty soon after Deadpool 2, but they didn't want both of those movies in like some of the same markets at the same exact time. And so they kept delaying it. Then they delayed it for Apocalypse or Dark Phoenix. So it's like, it just kept happening. And it does suck because I think that the universe where we got this movie 2-3 years earlier is drastically different and probably better off for it. Because kind of going off of that, in 2019, following Disney's acquisition of Fox, everything got so much more confusing. The additional work on the movie was reportedly halted. Part of the problem was they couldn't do reshoots because they had filmed in 2017. So the cast had aged up dramatically and you can't necessarily go back and try to make that work. And a lot of the VFX still had to be done on the Soul Sword and on Lockheed. It got super confusing under the Disney umbrella because at one point the D23 website listed this movie as part of the MCU and then very quickly deleted that because it was so confusing. I remember that day. I remember that day. It was something
Look at
else.
Jamie. She missed it because she was there.
Yeah.
I was in another timeline, apparently.
Yeah. Because part of it was the first trailer was very heavily inspired by it. The subsequent trailers were very much trying to make it an MCU-ish movie, which was then wild because it's like they were simultaneously making it more of a horror movie in the process. So that I think is a huge part of the marketing and people's reaction to the marketing was like they were trying to sell the movie on 2 different things, and even then they're gaslighting us as to whether or not it's even in the MCU. So yeah, it's just wild.
Stuff like this is how Tyrese thinks he's in the MCU. Like, like they need to be more clear on their business.
Are you sure about that?
Did Tyrese say he was in the MCU?
He told BD that to his face. Yes,
he did. Yeah. Listen, after Secret Wars, who knows? Anything could happen. But yeah, so ultimately after all of that, and again, this is the super duper Cliff Notes version of the production of this movie. It was ultimately released on August 28th, 2020. It was released exclusively in theaters because contractually, when it was originally greenlit, it could not be released exclusively on streaming. So it didn't even have the premiere access thing that they ultimately did with Mulan and Black Widow and all of that because they needed to have it exclusively in theaters. I honestly think that so much of the backlash of this movie initially, because like I was looking on Letterboxd and like there's a lot of people who I am friends with on Letterboxd who I trust and I normally agree with. And I think because they saw the movie as it was coming out and because it was at the height of COVID, you're potentially risking getting ill to go to this movie. I get being negative on it. I get being underwhelmed by it. But I think like for being a movie that you just watch at home, I liked it a lot more than I thought I would. But yeah.
It's not worth risking your life for. I mean, you know, it's not Birds of Prey, which I would have which was out right before. Like, but so that makes sense. It's an ad. I remember I watched it for the first time, like I think over a year after it came out, and I'm like after it all had died down. So that's it.
Well, so talking about your relationship to this movie. Explain the Buffy Easter eggs. You texted our group chat with the 4 of us saying that you were very excited to channel Professor Jenna here. So,
this this is like born. I was made for this. Like, this is part of the reason why I love this movie, is because they let me talk about Buffy, which, as we know, is my favorite thing in the whole wide world, is Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So really cool. This is actually really cool. So get ready. So they're in the movie, you see them watching 2 different Buffy episodes. The first Buffy episode that they show is The Body, which is considered by many to be the greatest episode of the series. It's also considered by many to be the most depressing episode of television, not just Buffy, television ever made. If you Google some lists, The Body from Buffy will be number 1. It's a very emotional, bleak episode about grief. It's about grief. So it ties into this really well. But the moment from the episode that they show is Willow and Tara kissing. And Willow and Tara at this point in Buffy had been together for a year. And it was very clear they were together. It wasn't like, oh, we're dancing around it. They were girlfriends. But that was the first time they ever kissed on screen, was an entire season after they got together. And it was just, when it was during this emotional, grief-stricken moment, and which made the kiss way more powerful. So they're watching, so that they show that Rain is watching that. And then, like, 10 minutes later, her and Danny kiss. And I think that is just like beautiful and perfect. And then later in the episode, Ileana is watching Hush, which is a season 4 episode, and also considered one of the greatest episodes of the series, maybe arguably the best. It just depends who you're talking to. And in Hush, they have these creatures called the Gentlemen, who steal your voices so you can't scream, so they can rip out your heart. And the Gentlemen look a lot like the Smiley Men, very similar. And Ileana is the one watching that episode, just like Rain is the one watching The Body. There's literally a shot of her standing, and you can see the Gentlemen on the TV behind her. And the episode that the party episode they're watching is when Buffy is kicking butt against them, and she has like major Buffy vibes, like not just because she has long blonde hair, but like at the end, the way she's like really goes for it and kicking butt and gets over her fear and stuff. Just 2 really perfect choices to tie in with this movie, which is like another reason why I really like it, because it's like, they use my favorite show in the whole world to explore these really exciting themes. My only thing is, they showed those 2 episodes out of order, that they went season 5 to season 4. And so what I like to think is that the girlies love Buffy and they're watching Buffy all the time, that they're just going through the greatest hits at this point. They're just like, let's just bounce around. So that is my Buffy spiel. Go watch Buffy.
That is fascinating. Like, as someone who only just like culturally tangentially knows Buffy, like that was really fascinating to kind of get those connections. That's really cool.
Can I say too as well, like, it's funny that like Buffy is having such a weird moment like the last 2-3 years. Like I'm about to say, it's always been ever present on social media, but in a real way, I'm like, oh wow, people are really like, this is one of the TV shows. Everybody talks about The Sopranos and Mad Men and all that stuff. This is just as much weird functional foundation of the internet talking about TV. That and Supernatural are right there, which is funny to me. Also, every time you say Smiling Men, I think about like Smiling Friends, and I laugh because if they were getting chased, like, Charlie, why are we chasing these children? Like, it doesn't make sense. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, at least it makes it less scary because this is not the movie. Also, that episode, it's like very harrowing. It's like anti-Aaron television, but yet I've experienced it. It's not good. In the future, we don't have that, Jamie.
No.
I love it. So one other just connection that this movie has is they reuse footage from Logan, which I, again, having watched this just now for the first time, I was not at all prepared for. That I was like genuinely surprised by that, because it seems like when Danny is able to read Reyes, she like sees a vision of the children, the clone children that like Laura is a part of in Logan. So I guess it's kind of to hint of like, oh, we're going to kill them and then clone them, like use their DNA to clone them and make new mutant children. But I was definitely surprised by that, because in all of the discourse around this movie, nobody ever mentioned that like they straight up reuse footage from Logan.
It also like asks like when does this take place? Is kind of a question, I guess, in the future. This is the answer if they're showing footage from Logan.
I think at this point they just didn't care, because I think like they just wanted the movie to get released. But it is funny because like having everything we talked about of like the MCU of it all, of like maybe this can be folded in, maybe this is like completely straight alone, and then to still just reuse Logan footage is just kind of wild to me. But yeah. And
They're
then
just
oh,
so
go ahead.
weird that we just keep like every single attempt to like streamline this and make a new one and it's not connected, and then you put in Logan footage or you have James McAvoy come back or whatever. It's like we're never going to be free. Even now, as you're probably supposed to be building MCU X-Men, that Hugh Jackman's going to be a cyborg in 2075 and he's going to still be Wolverine. It doesn't make sense.
It's not even like this is exclusive to Marvel though, because like I can make the same argument about like Clooney at the end of Flash, because it's like, why did you need to throw this in? You knew what this movie was ultimately going to be, and yet there he is. So history just keeps repeating itself with that. But yeah, so I will talk a little bit about the sequel plans, because as I said, Josh Boone originally pitched this as a trilogy and originally wanted to make a trilogy. So the second film would have been an alien invasion movie with Warlock, who, if you're a comic fan or you've seen him in the animated series, like you know how weird that could have potentially gotten seeing that in live action. And then Sunspot's dad and his connections to the Hellfire Gala would have been involved there. I think they said they would have even like filmed the second movie in Brazil, which would have been cool to see. And then the third movie would have been fully apocalyptic horror inspired by Inferno, which, if you remember from the Madeline Pryor episode of X-Men 97, that was a very, very truncated version of how Inferno is in the comics. So I am super sad that we didn't get either of these movies, especially now having seen this, because I think that in a perfect world where these all came to fruition, even if they weren't perfect, they still would have been a lot of fun to see.
Yeah, it makes me sad. Anytime it's always such a bummer when you don't get the sequels, and sometimes it's like, do it anyway. It's like sometimes like in the end, one movie not doing well does not have really changed that. They're like, we're not doing this movie now. I mean, sometimes, but not like, it could be a whole new thing. I know that's not how the world works, but I can pretend.
I just don't, they're going to make the decisions they make, and nothing is really tied to things. And when things actually are successful, other places, other studios pivot their own plans wildly around something that you cannot replicate on this side. So why are you even trying to? I'm reminded of just so much weird stuff that's happened in just a short time I've worked at comic book. Don't let me go back to my early 20s before I worked here. From everything with Joss Whedon reshooting Justice League on, like everything could have been different if you're not chasing each other. But here we are,
Yep. So, Jamie, go ahead.
Oh no.
I thought you were going to say something.
Yeah.
Okay. Do y'all have anything else you want to add or talk about with the movie? Positives, negatives, whatever. Because again, I know the chat seems to disagree with us in liking this movie. So,
would you have liked to see a different take on the whole Demon Bear thing? I know it's a thing a lot of X-Men fans have had on their like checklist for forever, and then for it to happen in this, and then it to not really resonate at all in the consciousness makes me go, well, there's something they're not going to do in the MCU X-Men. That's not happening. And I don't think we're getting Inferno in the MCU X-Men either. I don't think that's happening either. I have no idea what they're going to do. It took a couple of big things off the board because of its relative recency, I guess, right?
See, I feel like we could still get Inferno, because I feel like this movie did not really set that up in any way that anyone actually remembers. So I think I also think it's something that like Fox never even remotely actually touched or actually started laying the groundwork for. So I think they could do that if they wanted and be like, here we are, we're doing something completely different from Fox. But as far as like the Demon Bear stuff goes, I think this worked within the context of the movie. Like, sure, it might not be like 1,000,000% comic accurate. It might not be like the best conscious way of like getting people aware of like how good the Demon Bear comics are, but like I think it worked within the context that we were given. So
I think it's cool. I think all this like the stuff at the end is pretty neat. But I don't have any strong feelings about Demon Bear. I cannot say that I went into this movie being like Demon Bear showing up. So it's just like Demon Bear. That's where I'm at.
You made it sound like it walked in on a ball.
I know. I love it. Do y'all have anything else to add about the movie?
I just want to say that I like the cast a lot. I think like I especially Anya Taylor-Joy. I makes me sad we'll never see her as Magic again, because I think she's awesome. Despite, you're right, like it's very weird that like like she can be a bully without being racist. That was just like such a weird choice. And but aside from that, that's not her fault. The actor's fault. That was the choice made. I think like she's just really good. I mean, she's just a really good actor. I mean, go see Furiosa in theaters. It's meant to be seen on the big screen. That's all I'll say.
Yes. I will say, I almost think like the racist stuff was almost from the movie being set in like the 80s or 90s, and then they just like forgot to take that out when they made it present day. Like that's like the best case scenario I can think of for why it's still in the movie. But yeah, I think that aside, she does such a good job. Like there's a reason why still to this day everyone still suggests that she should be in the MCU, because it's like you're not going to get a more definitive portrayal of the character. And just when we get fully to the point of like, here she is with the soul sword and with Lockheed, like fighting the demon bears, like this is just awesome. Like I don't care. Like that really sealed the movie for me. Of like, I legitimately do like this.
I think a lot of the fans just pick the people with the coolest powers to be in these movies. Like that's probably it. Her design is really bitchin'. Like it's really, really cool. Every Hellfire Gala look, when I look at the slideshow of what Russell and them have cooked up, I immediately, after I get through a couple of my faves, go straight to Magic just to see what we got going on. So, you know, I think that's a big part of it too. And someone in the comments said maybe they can revisit it in the MCU because no one cared. All sorts of stuff. If you don't think we're gonna end up having to get dragged through Phoenix again, you got another thing coming. They can't help themselves. Why would I think that wasn't gonna happen? You know.
That is a good point. Also, how did we feel about Sunspot, especially now that we've seen X-Men 97? I was very surprised by how they do his powers. Like it worked for like the body horror aspect of it. Like it worked really well in context. It did feel very much like we still have like leftover Human Torch VFX that we're just going to use here, but like it worked for me. I don't know.
I said that to Tony yesterday. I was like, oh, it was cool. It was cool to see Roberto in live action in a post X-Men 97 world, and I think that he did a good job. But yeah, the his look I think was fine. I didn't have strong feelings about it either way.
I love that you like the idea of like VFX being left over like art supplies. Like we have a big can of that Fantastic Four VFX left over from Josh Trank and whatever else. Just toss it all in there. He's another weird one that I'm like, I wonder what's going to happen if you're even going to be in the MCU. You're like obviously a big corner of the fans' favorite, but also we got other fish to fry. If it's going to be a smaller group, I hope you guys enjoyed X-Men 97.
Yes.
I don't think he's going to make the cut.
Yeah. I will say to Jamie's point, I do think the cast thoroughly, just everyone did a great job. Like accents galore. It is wild. Like Charlie Heaton's accent, I was not prepared for in any way, shape, or form.
He went really hard with it.
That was not in the marketing whatsoever. So I was very surprised by that.
For good reason.
I think everyone committed. Like Maisie Williams, there's a reason why she and Anya were the first people cast for this movie, because it's like they both did such great jobs. And I do think like Maisie as Wolfsbane was really, really effective. And especially once we started getting to kind of the queer love story. So yeah, do we have anything else to add about the movie, or are we going to, get to our 10 score?
Let's get to those 10 scores.
Oh boy, let's do it. All right. So we're going to take a quick 1-minute break. And when we come back, we are going to rank the movie out of 10. So stay tuned for that. Welcome back to Phase Zero. We are in our New Mutants bonus episode, and it is now time to review and rank the movie out of a 10 score. Aaron, you're at the top of the board, so why don't you go first?
Oh boy, putting you up front where I have a chance to set the tone is a glaring mistake that Jen Anderson is going to get talked to by BD about.
Oh,
So I'd like to thank her for the opportunity to f everything up. I'm thinking like 6.5, 6.8, probably. Like I enjoyed this a lot more. Like I missed a bunch of weeks. Bro, you don't want to hear what I would have had to say about Apocalypse. You don't want to hear what I would have said about Dark Phoenix. Like, I think that that's probably about right, so that we all don't get fired by not Jim but JK now. That's probably not gonna help.
Weren't you on our Apocalypse episode? You missed
What?
Deadpool 2 and Dark Phoenix.
I missed Deadpool too, and I don't know what I would have said there either, because like half of that is what is going on here. I'm gonna get a wheel for the rankings, and I'm just gonna do it with a wheel the entire time, because everything but like X2, Days of Future Past, First Class, and like maybe like Logan and Deadpool 1, those are the ones I feel strongly about. Everything else I'm like, what up? But that's how you get Origins Wolverine in the top 10, and I get yelled at too.
See, we needed you in our Deadpool 2 episode because we were fighting for our lives.
I listened to it after the fact, and I was like, "Ooh, boy, I missed a weird one." I'm just that childish Gambino meme where he comes in with the pizzas. I'm like, "What? Why are all my friends fighting? Why did it happen?"
Oh boy! All right, so we got a 6.8. Jamie, take it away.
This is a 3.5 for me on Letterboxd, which brings it up to a 7. And I kind of like the 7, but I really feel like just to ease the people, I'm just gonna bump it to a 6.9. Which is not my truth.
Yeah, nice.
But like, I just feel like I know we're gonna get, no matter what this is gonna come out to be, we're gonna get crap for it. So I'm gonna bump it down a little, 7.9, 6.9.
See, here I was thinking I would be one of the highest scores on this episode, but I'm actually going to be the lower one. Because again, I do think this movie is flawed, but it is still just a lot of fun. And I have a lot of fun watching movies that are flawed occasionally. I think like a 5.8 or 5.9 is probably where I'm at with it, because I can recognize that it's just good, all things considered. And I'm happy that it exists after, as Aaron said, we spent so much time on the site covering whether or not this movie would even be released, which was just kind of wild, especially like pre-Batgirl that we were talking about that extensively. But yeah, so I'm going to say like a 5.8. I think that's where I'm comfortably at. And so dividing that by 3, our phase 0 score, BD is going to dread this. Oh my God. But again, this is what he gets for missing this episode.
I don't, like, we have a whole month before Deadpool, so that's on him.
But so our official phase 0 score is a 6.5. So I think that's pretty fair, all things considered. Again, I do not think this is even remotely in the same category as stuff like X-Men Origins or even Dark Phoenix. Like, I feel like this is astronomically, both in intention and in execution, not even remotely there. So I don't know. That's our score, and we'll stick with it. Like I said, we're probably going to do a rankings episode for all of these movies now that we've revisited all of them. So that is where it's going to get really contentious of how people do or don't feel about certain entries in this. But yeah, that'll be it for another week, I guess. So Aaron, do you have anything you want to leave the listeners with today?
Oh boy, it's at Sunlight Corner on Twitter. We finally did it, you guys. We're out of the wasteland that was these, which I'm just so happy about, which you can't tell from the rest of the episode. I will say, go watch BD try to win a Deadpool and Wolverine necklace in absolute futility on Instagram. It's very funny. He bought multiple tickets to the movie to keep trying to win these tickets and to get this necklace. And then, of course, Fandango announced that you can just go get them with your purchase of your ticket. So it's very fun. Poor BD. He's going to be so mad when he sees this ranking. He's going to be like, what is wrong with all of you? Why do you hate me? And I'm like, oh, I hate you, BD. Morbius hates you.
Yes, he should have been there for the Deadpool one.
Yeah. All right, Jamie, do you have anything you want to leave the listeners with today?
Yes. Thank you all for going on this road to Deadpool journey with us. Unlike Aaron, I loved it because I like rewatching movies and I love the X-Men. Also, from a Buffy fans out there, if you're a fellow Buffy fan living in Los Angeles, I'm gonna be hanging out at Hellmouth Con, which is just a Buffy con, on June 15th. So if you're there, come find me and say hello. Talk about
if you're
Buffy.
A Buffy fan, go watch. I saw the TV Glow too. Go do that.
Absolutely. As Jamie said, thank you to everyone who joined us on this journey. We're definitely probably going to do this again, just on a much smaller scale. I would be shocked if we don't rewatch all of like the Fantastic Four movies before that movie comes out next year, but that'll be much less of an undertaking than all of this is. And we will plan that at a much later date. But yeah, thank you guys so much for joining us on this journey. We will be back on Wednesday with another bonus episode. I'm at Hey It's Jenna Lynn on social media. And as always, go read some comics. As Aaron said, if you like this movie, go read the Demon Bear storyline of the New Mutants. It is very easy to find just as a trade paperback, and I highly recommend it. And yeah, we will be back for our show on Wednesday, so be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and play the show for your mom, play the show for your dog, and we will see you then.